Because I used to think about it a little bit too, but like when you would actually joust in medieval times, if they had say they had no shield and you were actually in war, you were on a battlefield. If that joust goes all the way through, the lance goes all the way through, and then they sort of like grab onto it, like a lot of people do when they die. Wouldn't you kind of break your arm, or you would have to get rid of the lance because now you have the whole weight of a full man on the end of the joust. Like, you know, what do you do if it goes all the way through?
Wow.
What's up, everybody? My name is Michael Stephenson. Welcome back to my channel. So obviously this is my YouTube channel, but you are currently watching my entertainment industry series. I ask that if you are a first-time viewer, please go back and watch some of the earlier videos on the channel. I'm trying to do these videos in a particular order. And in doing that, I'm trying to build up a lingo or language on the channel so that we can have a shorthand in later on videos so that people actually would know what the heck it is that I'm talking about when I mention something like the Lost Effect or the Rocky Horror Syndrome or Trailer Park. And I don't have to re-explain those ideas. So please go watch those videos. I would ask it kindly, and thank you. I've mentioned more than a couple of times here on the channel that I'm a writer and I'm trying to give you guys some stuff from a sort of writer's perspective. And one of the things that I guess I wanted to talk about is the idea of through lines. And this is going to be heavy Marvel. I'm going to have a Marvel / MCU month, I think, not just mixing and interspersing videos about Marvel throughout the whole channel, although I'll probably still do that as well since, you know, Marvel is still the thing that gets the clicks and all that stuff. But I wanted to address a few things first before we do those videos so that we can have a baseline understanding of some of the things that Marvel is doing right and some of the things that Marvel is doing wrong. And one of those things that I wanted to talk about, and this goes for all other movies as well, especially these big time franchises, is that of the idea of through lines. It is actually I would actually say that it's a fairly advanced writing concept. I don't really feel like you learn about through lines in basic writing classes, basic creative writing classes, because they're just kind of a more advanced subject matter. Okay, so I'm going to talk about through lines, and yeah, I'm going to use Marvel basically as the best example for that. All right, so we first start off with the idea of what even is a through line. Essentially, a through line it usually is used in, I believe the dictionary definition of it is that it's usually more often used by or within a franchise or a grouping or collection of stories that relate to each other. However, in advanced writing, it does not have to be a collection of stories. It can just be in one specific story. It sometimes can be a theme, but it doesn't have to always be a theme. And this is one of the reasons why I say that through lines usually are not something that you learn in the basic writing classes because they are more advanced. It can be a theme, but it doesn't always have to be a theme. It can be a particular narrative style or narrative structure or idiosyncrasy, but it doesn't have to be that. It can be a resonance point, and it oftentimes is some kind of a resonance point, but it doesn't have to be that either. Essentially, a through line is sort of an idea that will run through the entirety of a story or a narrative. It will run through the entirety of a narrative, and it will be sort of a recurring idea. Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be a theme. Not really. It doesn't have to be a theme. It oftentimes is, but it does not have to be a thing. But it often will be something that runs through the entire narrative and unites one point of the narrative to another point of the narrative. A through line is hard to define because it can be a lot of different things, and a lot of different movies use it differently. But then on top of that, there are a lot of good or even great writers who will create through lines but don't even really know that they're doing it. It can oftentimes be a subconscious thing that they are just building into the story because that's just how they That's just how they think. That's just how they write story. The concept of a through line is best viewed through, weirdly enough, the MCU. The through line, and this is one of the reasons as to why Marvel movies feel so different now post Endgame as opposed to pre Endgame. Marvel had a great through line throughout pretty much their entire MCU Infinity Saga. That through line was the idea of Iron Man, Tony Stark, becoming a true Iron Man, becoming the man that he was supposed to be, that he was wanting to be. Now, again, if you've seen my resonance video, then you already know that there were all sorts of thematic, narrative, and even emotional resonances surrounding Tony. There was a reason for that, and there was also a big reason. The through line through the MCU was a big reason as to why it felt like, for that Infinity Saga, from Iron Man all the way to Endgame, it felt like Tony Stark slash Iron Man slash Robert Downey Jr., so the actual actor in real life, it felt like he was Marvel. It felt like he was the MCU, and as opposed to just being a character within the MCU, he loomed incredibly large over pretty much everything. And again, the reason why is because in reality, you think that you're following all of these different characters, stories with all these different characters and how they get along and how they become better people, how they become better men, better women, how they become superheroes. When in reality, you're really following the development, the growth, and the evolution and the ultimate death of one specific character. And what happens is that with this through line of Tony Stark becoming a true Iron Man in not just in the suit, but becoming a true Iron Man emotionally, becoming a true Iron Man mentally, becoming the superhero, as well as the father, as well as the upstanding man, as well as the upstanding citizen, honestly, the upstanding world citizen that he always essentially either wanted to be, or that he saw himself being, or that people around him saw him being. They saw this potential in him to be something greater. That through line runs through pretty much every single story that you have, regardless of who or what the characters are within those other stories. There's maybe like one or two that doesn't go with Tony Stark. And so essentially what happens is that outside of Tony Stark and outside of his little brew of close-knit friends and family, Happy, Pepper Potts, even, what's his name? Rhodey, outside of them, pretty much all of the other major superheroes become essentially avatars for Tony. They become some kind of avatar for Tony. And they become stand-ins for either bits and pieces of his own personality, or they become pillars of what he wants to be. So again, I think I may have mentioned this in the Resonance video as well. You have Tony Stark, and he is the most well-formed character within the MCU. He's the one who actually feels like he has a backstory. He has a future, which you don't know what that is, but you know that it's going to be exciting. He has all the makings of character. He has motivations. He has things that he cares about. He has little idiosyncrasies to make him into even more of a real character. You can understand him, why he does the things that he does. He even has a particular mood or vibe to his character that you are supposed to feel. And we'll talk about character vibes and things of that nature probably when we get into Marvel month. His vibe is essentially the cool one. You're supposed to feel as if he's sort of this cool character, and Robert Downey Jr., as well as the directors and writers that he worked with, as well as Kevin Feige, they all work well to make sure that you feel that he is the cool character. All of these things mix to create a fantastic starter character. Okay, so that's the basis for pretty much all of the other characters. And so then you have these other characters that come along, and yes, they are their own superheroes. They are their own men. They are their own women. But they also serve as stand-ins or little avatars for bits and pieces of what the Iron Man character is, making a through line through all of the films. So you have Thor. Thor is his vibe, his mood is the fun one, right? But he also reflects that side as an avatar of Tony. He reflects that side of Tony. So before you even see one single frame of Thor, you've already seen Tony Stark partying it up, a little drunk, mind you, in the Iron Man suit in Iron Man 2. Thor is the avatar of that. He is the reflection of who Tony is when Tony is partying. You then create a through line. So Tony Stark is connected to Thor because both of them have a very similar trait, a very similar characteristic. So that through line is connected from one character to the next. Taking just that through line all the way through to the end, it's saying that, listen, Tony can still be the lighthearted, partying, sort of center of attention type of person, while at the same time becoming a better person, becoming the great Iron Man that he is supposed to be. Then you have Captain America. Captain America is yet again an avatar for what Tony wants to be. He has some of the best male traits. He has those sort of iconic traits that Tony looks up to. In some ways, Captain America, even though he's technically seen as a younger character to Tony because he's been on ice for so long, he is in some ways a man that Tony can look up to, not specifically as a physical thing, but the idea of Captain America, the idea that Steve embodies, and the ideas are very close to what Tony has always wanted to be. He's always wanted to be the person who probably can do really good thing. He wants to be the one who is beloved by pretty much all people, the one who will in fact go and jump on the grenade. He wants to think of himself as an upstanding citizen, as an upstanding person. Captain America has that. So again, Thor has part of his personality, what he is now. Captain America stands in as an avatar of what he wants to be within the future. He needs to figure out a way to meld those two. And again, you keep going through the Infinity Saga, and almost every superhero that you meet over and over again, they stand in as an avatar, creating a through line through all of the movies. They stand in as an avatar of either something that Tony is right now or something that he wants to be. Spider-Man is an avatar where he both, weirdly enough, he represents both Tony, the younger version of Tony Stark, of what Tony thought about himself, about how smart he is, how much of a genius that he is, although he is sometimes given over to stupid and naive actions, which is probably what got Tony to go into the weapons trade following after his father's footsteps. That may have been naive on his part at the time. He sees that in Spider-Man. But Spider-Man does interesting thing because Spider-Man also serves as an avatar of what Tony would like to be in the future. He wants to be a good father. He's hoping that he can both embody the good traits that he saw in both his own father as well as his mother. He hopes to embody those traits while at the same time improving in the areas that he thinks that his father may have been lacking in. So he is essentially both trying to become his father as well as trying to nurture his own youthful self and trying to fix the flaws in both of them at the same time. Doctor Strange, I mean, come on, that's almost a one-on-one through line for Tony's ego. He's the avatar for Tony's ego. And how Tony views himself as this larger than life billionaire he is the one that all of the world, all of the earth looks to for pretty much everything. He thinks himself almost like a god, and seeing as how he has literally touched the heavens going through that portal when they fought the New York battle in Avengers, seeing as how he has himself touched the heavens, it does feel very much so like he is a bit of a god. Speaking of gods, you even have Chris Pratt's, why can I not remember his actual character's name right now? You have Star-Lord, who is actually legitimately a half god. He also is like weirdly enough, a younger sort of space dummy kind of version of Iron Man. Yes, obviously he doesn't have the smarts, but there's a certain level of, God, I don't really know what to call it. There's a certain level of, I guess you could say, for lack of a better word, ego. You can see what I did there? There's a certain level of humble arrogance that Star-Lord has, to where there's a little bit of bumblingness. There's a little bit of, again, a little bit of naivete, but there's also a pretty good mixture of a certain level of ego where, yes, he's sure about himself, but essentially Star-Lord can embody or be the avatar for the times when Tony isn't quite as sure about himself. Yes, he's sure, but there's also those few times to where he has that little bit of doubt. There's that little bit of breaking of the fourth wall of the character that he has created, of the Tony Stark character that he has created for everybody, for all the world to see, as opposed to the person that he legitimately is. Again, through all of it, you can get to sort of Captain Marvel and Black Panther, and then you can sort of see a little bit of a breakage of the through line there. But the reason as to why most of Infinity Saga has a lot of the father issues, where all of the characters have some sort of dad issue, is essentially to mirror the issues that Tony Stark himself has had with his own parents, specifically with his own father, creating still a through line through all of it, to where it still all unites back to his specific character. It is his journey. It is his maturation. It is his evolution that we are seeing. So yes, all of the other characters, they can go on their own journeys and they can have their own epitomes and own realizations. But it is not until Tony Stark / Iron Man himself has those same epitomes, those same realizations, do we actually feel, in some ways, not vindicated, but in some ways fulfilled, or we feel a certain payoff, if you will, to use a layman's term. We feel a certain payoff or a certain payout by Tony feeling it, because the through line through all of the Marvel MCU, at least for the Infinity Saga, is there is just this one man who is trying desperately to become the great human, the great person that he has projected out to all of humanity, to all of the rest of the people around him. He's trying to become that which he desperately thinks that he is, and that which everyone else already sees him as well as fix some of the problems that he thinks that he has had, or that his parents have had, specifically his father, in the past. That is essentially the great version of a through line. The problem with the MCU right now, honestly, one of the biggest problems is that they don't have a legitimate through line right now. Or in other words, there's no particular gauge by which almost every character is, I guess, judged in some ways, right? So again, going back to Tony, he is not only the through line of the MCU, he is not only, essentially, he is not only Marvel in and of itself, he's not only the comic books in itself of itself, but if you want to take it another way, all of his avatars can also be judged against him as the main character in the story. So he's the main character, and even though you have these other big-time superheroes, they can all be judged against him on a sliding scale. How much like Tony are they? How much not like Tony are they? How much is their situation with their parents or with their friends or whoever is in their life? How much is that like Tony's situation? How much is it not like Tony's situation? There's a sliding scale, essentially, of how close to Iron Man are these people, and how far away from them, how far away from Iron Man are these people. One of the biggest problems with the MCU right now is that they don't have that. There is no model avatar to stand in, but there also isn't a anti-avatar to stand in either. There's essentially nothing to clam onto as this is a storyline that we are subconsciously all following, and we are consciously all rooting for. Subconsciously, for the Infinity Saga, we were all following the storyline of Tony Stark's progression and evolution to become the man that he ultimately wanted and needed to be. MCU right now, they don't have that. And as I said, you can have that just in one film too. It doesn't have to be a multiple film thing. One of the problems that I had with Dune, and I'll discuss this even more in my Dune video, is that there was no through line for that movie either. You don't know pretty much anything about, there's no measurement for Paul Atreides. When people talk about Dune, they say, oh, it's this anti-savior story. And because we know that Paul eventually will become, spoiler alert, well, maybe I shouldn't say it. I'll leave that for my Dune video. But essentially, Dune Part 1 had no through line either, which is going to make it harder to connect to Dune Part 2 because the story unfolds even more. And there was no connection there either. There was nothing, there was no way to measure Paul's, I guess, evolution, his growth, his progress, or lack thereof. There was nothing there. It just had no through line to have any sort of one specific theme that is punched to the audience over and over again. There was nothing there. I just don't know. There was nothing there. But with the Marvel MCU, there is a constant through line that is punched over and over again. Not only is it, of course, that Tony Stark is becoming Iron Man, but that there are certain things about his past that he must defeat, certain villains from both his parents' past, his own past, but that there's also a lot of emotional work that he needs to do. There's forgiveness that he needs to both earn and to give. Grace, all of these things that he needs to do that his avatars are accomplishing in their own movies. So that is a through line. Am I satisfied with how I described that? Sort of, kind of. Again, we'll expand on it a little bit more during the Marvel month. But I think I said pretty much what I wanted to say. I'm going to try to keep this video a little bit shorter. So, yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I don't have a sign. Hey, everybody. So while I don't have an official sign off yet, I guess I should do the whole please like, comment, share, and if you so desire and you want to see more, subscribe. But more importantly, I will ask that you please go and purchase one of my books. They are mostly ebooks, and pretty much they are all under $10. See if any of my work is actually any good, if it lives up to any of the things that I'm talking about here on my channel, specifically with the entertainment industry videos. So please go purchase my books. All of my links are down below. Thank you.